Now, women's safety was one of the big areas of conversation for yesterday's International Women's Day. And a survey of women in Warwickshire found that 80% say they regularly cross the road when a man is walking towards them, while 70% carry keys in their hands as self-defence.
It's just a snapshot of how women feel in that part of the Midlands, but campaigners say it's a universal feeling for women everywhere. Rosie Dowsing has been looking at these figures and joins us in the studio now. Rosie, that's quite shocking, those numbers, and a real worry that so many women feel under threat.
Well, those figures seem very high, but actually many people we have spoken to say they aren't shocked or surprised by them, which certainly points to a big problem when it comes to women feeling safe. More on that later, but first let's look at Warwickshire then, where those figures come from. As an example, it's a relatively rural county without the big urban areas like Birmingham, Coventry or Wolverhampton, where crime rates are much higher. But Warwickshire does have the lowest conviction rates for rape and sexual assault in England, a rate of 1.3%. So let's look at those survey results you mentioned then. This was carried out by Leamington Spa's MP Matt Weston and had 266 respondents. So nearly 80% of women say they regularly cross the road when a man is walking towards them. And 69% of women in Warwickshire carry keys in their hands as self-defence. 66% call someone while walking home alone. We put these statistics to women and men of all ages, and not many of them told me they were surprised, and in terms of solutions pointed towards education and early prevention.
Do that, especially if it's like getting a bit dark. I hold my key in my hands because then you know you're going to be safe, aren't you? Because you never know.
70%, that's over half. This is a big percentage.
Sadly, I'm probably not surprised.
And has that always been the case throughout your life, that you just don't feel safe? Is it worse now?
Definitely, yeah, definitely. And I mean, I grew up on a council estate and never felt vulnerable or at risk, even as a young woman. But sadly, I think I probably do feel more vulnerable now, after dark particularly.
I guess I'm not too surprised if it's dark and if it's late and maybe if they're walking alone. I mean, I feel like even men take some steps. For example, if I'm walking behind if a lady and it's pretty late, I tend to cross the road myself.
I mean, I've got 6 grandsons and I'm always talking to them about being respectful, so respect starts from in the home.
Well, I also spoke to a Warwick University professor who specialises in inequality studies and feminism. Interestingly, she works in Warwick, but actually told me she didn't feel safe when she lived in the Midlands and so now commutes from Glasgow. She says, for women to feel respected and therefore safe, a massive cultural shift is needed, and that starts in schools.
Part of the job of education is helping people find different ways in which we might relate to each other, in which we might love each other, and might be in relationships and commune with each other. And that's part of the job of schools, but it's also the part of the job of universities as well, to say that there's another way that we can interact with each other that's based on mutual respect and trust.
So lots of mention about education and respect there, something that can be taught. Well, it was Leamington MP Matt Weston who led this research and has started working with local schools and organisations to see how to tackle violence against women and girls in the long term. He's currently working with Safeline in Warwick, one of the only charities in the country that goes into schools to teach about healthy relationships and consent.
But what is most shocking, I guess, and most surprising is that Warwickshire has the worst conviction rate of all counties in England, at 1.3% for rape and sexual assault. That is a really dreadful statistic, and that is why I want to push this agenda. And I think whether it be in our primary schools, our secondary schools, colleges, and higher education, that we are explaining to young people the sort of behaviours that should be normal, those that are not, and then really to be talking about consent.
So some action underway to address this problem in Warwickshire, but again, that's just one part of the Midlands and the wider UK. Now, a massive cultural change might take some time, but certainly the fact more people are talking about women's safety and recognising an issue, there can only be a good thing there.
I think that's very true. Rosie, thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, the ITV